All right, Bruno. This is my third and last evaluation for today. And I had a bit of a rough start. This morning I wrote like 2,000 words. I was only going to write 1,000 or maybe 1,200, but I ended up writing that. And then when I finished, I really felt like uploading it and sourcing the images and everything else. And so I had a bit of a late start. And I had actually woken up a little too early. So um, but that's how it is. Sometimes you work a 12 or 13-hour day in this business. So here I am. Probably will be at hour 14 by the time I finish this. But so long as I've got my voice left, it's a delight to be looking at your score. Yeah. Um, so let's take everything from, like, we'll start from E and we'll go to the end, and then we'll jump back and do D to E and so on, and then back from A to A through C. So starting off with just kind of looking at how you framed the melody, dun, dun, da, da. Uh, I'm not sure why the the upper winds here sort of fade out, but I mean I can see the kind of aesthetics here of just kind of like having your trumpet here really kind of keep blasting through. I'm just going to check out one little thing here. So you don't kind of tell me how many trumpets is on that. I'm just going to jump. So you have the option of two trumpets in B flat. And sometimes you have one going on, sometimes you have two. But look at the beginning of this big section here. You really got to tell us how many you're using, right? But let's assume that it's two, right? Let's assume that you are going ad due here with your trumpets, and having just a nice blasting time in here. And I would be tempted to also have your violins stay in the game, just nice and loud, and then fade out along with your winds and brass. And here I would fade out the winds to pianissimo, and I would fade out the brass to like triple P, right? Just to really just really bring them down to nothing, while the while your altos, your violas, continue playing. And it's rather cool here that you don't have the octave, you just have a single voice. So I'm with you there. And it's interesting. You also like cut down on the low notes here. So some things go diminuendo and some don't, right? And here you have this big roll and so on, back down to, just I would want to work on this balancing. If I were coaching you, like, if we were seriously taking this apart, I would want to work on why, what the reasons are for that fade out and so on. Now from here, you start in with your tuba, an octave higher than the than written in the piano part. So I mean, you could easily start an octave lower. It would be no problem for a tuba player to just start from the low E and go do 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 do. I can't sing that low. I can't sing all the way down to the lowest E on the piano. But yeah, so I do not mind you changing the octave here. What is a little less convincing is da 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 do, and then like going over the same notes. Right, it just feels like a little like we're just, like the music kind of isn't going anywhere. Right, so Barvinsky is having us rise up out of the darkness, and here we kind of rise up out of the semi-darkness twice. Right, so I'm not completely on board with that. But I can see that you don't want to keep the tuba too low. What if it went up to the B and then this kind of came under it and it went upwards? I would find that more convincing, but still, I'd wish that the tuba had started off an octave lower. All right, so here we have this long bass clarinet solo. That just really lasts all the way through to the end of the page, and I think it's really gorgeous. And there are a few weird things, like you have an accent at the end of a slur, And that's totally possible, but it's kind of a strange sound, and and you end up like with all of these slurs, you kind of miss a lot of opportunities to put emphasis on places. Like you want a forte piano at the end of a slur, right? That makes even less sense. You know, and here you go da 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 instead of da da da, right? So isn't this supposed to be a B? Now, if you changed it on purpose, I'll understand, but it doesn't. The change doesn't quite fit the harmony above, right? All right. But yeah, but just a suggestion here is just to simplify the slurring. Slur from here, no slur, hit the accent nice and hard. Same thing here. Slur, and then nice control here, starting from a new articulation down to being soft again. Slur here, no slur there. Just a nice accent. Slur this, don't slur that. Slur this, don't slur that. And then same thing here. In general, like as a rule, try not, like any opportunity you can have to like not slur down, too far. Of course, slowing down is no big deal for a clarinetist, but just like, anything that you can avoid, just kind of to make their lives a little easier. Like if you don't have to do it, then don't do it. Is the way that I would approach it. If you do need to do it, it's no problem. But if you don't have to do it, then throwing in slur down after slur down after slur down, it just gets to be kind of annoying after a while for some players. I would say even with horn players especially. So like I would slur like this and then this. Slurring down by a big drop is what I mean, not just slurring down a third or a fourth or something or a second. Okay, so I just sort of think philosophically, my ear has a problem with so much bass clarinet in a row, right? Because I think that like the sound of the bass clarinet is so magical, right? But how much magic can you take before it just becomes kind of humdrum after a while, right? It's just sort of like, I've seen that trick, right? So, beautiful creamy tone right up to here. I'm totally on board with you. And then, could there be some other instrument that could play this with a completely different timbre? Could play this part? And could this possibly be some other instrument? Like maybe tuba or bassoon or something else, just to kind of give the ear a rest. And then when the bass clarinet comes back in here, it's really fresh again. It's like, oh yeah, now this is going to take us back down. Yeah, I'm just not quite so. I mean, if you're a bass clarinetist and you're giving yourself more stuff to play, that's cool. Would be a good idea to like have consistent rests in both parts, or excuse me, slurs in both parts. Like, don't you mean this? Right, and then here you have a second voice coming in, but we kind of don't know how this works. Is this the first voice jumping up to here, and then the second voice coming in here? In which case, I'm assuming that that's what you mean. In which case, we really need this to be the second voice. So if I select it and then I just type Alt or Option 2, it puts it in the second voice, right? And that's just so much clearer, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, and it's just really nice the way that you've set this all up. I mean, it's not totally kosher with where Barvinsky has how Barvinsky has voiced his harmony, but it's not bad at all. So yeah, just what if this were bassoon, or what if this were bassoon? What if this were bassoon, and I mean, kind of can't like tuba followed by horn. It's not like the, what if this were solo cello, right? Is there some other possible thing we could do here? Yeah. But I mean, it's a nice radiant kind of a sound. So what's the dynamic here? Shouldn't we mark it like, say, piano or maybe even pianissimo, just to give it a nice kind of icy sound? Pianissimo on all of this. I mean, you can't just think, oh well, it was marked piano back here, so it's still piano. This is a new section, right? So you really want to give us clear instructions. Even if, like, Sibelius will be thinking, oh, well, the last marked dynamic is piano, so I'll play these softer. But, you get even, just, I think that, like, pianissimo here, and then everybody piano here with a different instrument taking this function here. Yeah. Yeah, what about bassoon here, taking the bass clarinet part, and then solo cello here? All right, so you have a problem here, like of sort of like voice crossing the function, right? So like the whole place where we are resting here with our harmony is a G6 chord, right? And if you look at where everything is set up in the strings, is actually quite a bit lower. So Barvinsky wants this to be an octave lower here on the G5 down here, and then here you've scored these two at the same place, and then you've added the E above. All right, and there is there is no B here, right? So it really is just a stack of like E, G, and D, right? And then here, like, boom, 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 and then this goes down to E. So when you put the E in the bass here, you kind of turn this into like an E minor seventh chord, right? So like the ear of the audience will hear this as a root, right? And that's kind of the same problem. I've been saying all along that people should be careful about changing the vertical order of certain functions because it changes the beautiful impressionist harmony. Yeah, and then this is cool. And then ba 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 ba. Once again, we have like the same exact pitches covered, right? So like it isn't a case where the bass clarinet comes in and plays lower pitches and so on, and things could just continue down further and further. When you really couldn't get any lower. So it's if you want a horn solo here, there's kind of nothing else you can do except for to take the horn an octave higher. So there's no reason why a good French horn player couldn't start on that high A. Da, 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 da. And then these two pitches overlapping on the same exact register. Da 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 da. Yeah, why not throw in a higher? Like everything is really low. Like you really are keeping all the melodies really really low here. Why can't this be high for a change? Try that out. Jump this up. Think of some of those changes I suggested. Jump this up an octave and then see how these connect. It's okay. You can start a high A on mezzo forte. That's a good player will not crack up there. Okay, and then here you have muted trumpet, stopped horn. I don't think you need so much weight. I don't think you need two horns here. You can just say a due, right? You don't have to say 1 period, 2 period. Right, just to check something here. Right, so all you need really is 4 horns in F in the middle with a bracket. Okay? And it really has to do with how you set up your instruments. So like here, when you just select this and say extra staff below, and then you get the bracket and you get the centered name, right? All right, let's go back to the end. So yeah, so you have to tell us who this is. Like you're telling us who this is, but who's this? Is this the the pitch order should be, if this really were 2 horns, the pitch order should be that this would be 1. And then you'd have the third on an A written here, and this D would be in this staff as the second, right? But I think you shouldn't even do that. You should have your first horn on the A, you should have your second horn on the D, and you shouldn't have anything down here, all right? And then that would be the best way. It's it's not the most balanced chord, really. Like I mean, it's like it's pitched somewhat higher, but like. The harp should be really more like, the harp and celesta should really be more like mezzo piano here. But it's all right. I'll give it to you. But but there are ways of balancing this. We could get into a little bit more, but I don't want to. I don't want to spend a half an hour just on this one section. I kind of did that in the past couple of sessions. I think you understand enough about how to set this up. So really great ending section here. I think I love the use of the bass clarinet. Just maybe ease up a little bit in here so that it still sounds fresh at the end. And think about jumping up your French horn an octave. It totally is capable of doing it. It has a beautiful sound up there in solo. Now, jumping back to D. I really like this, the beginning of D right in here. There's actually a similarity, I think, to the way that I did C. So you've got your octave melody on top, right? It kind of sort of drops out down here. There's no reason why. Yeah, I mean, yeah. There's no reason why we couldn't get like low sounding G sharp, but maybe it sounded a little crude to you. I don't know. But look, you have to tell us what's happening here. Is this, here you have a big slur over this. So is this both voices going forwards? If it's not, then this lower voice needs to be different, right? Yeah, there's a way of doing a little shortcut here. See, you could go like adding unisons. Select one of the voices, right? And then, right, so you could do something like this. This is a little bit of a cheat because you really should have two voices if you're going to do this across an entire phrase, but it can work. Just to kind of simplify things visually, and then you can also do the same thing with this if you want to. Anyway, let me just get rid of all that. But yeah, we have to know if this is two voices or one voice or what's going on here. You probably intend just a single voice. So I would just make this, if that's the case, then you could just do this. All right. Right. Do something like that. Anyway, not to get into it too heavily, but it's a cool idea because you have this pedal F sharp here, and you are taking pains to make sure that we hear these like cascading F sharps, and we've also got the context of this being a separate rather than anticipatory part of the boom boom thing happening here in the trombone. So you're saying A2, you mean here, right? Right. I think that since it's not, it's like one of these things where you don't want to keep marking A2, A2 all the time. So maybe this is another place where you could go like this, that kind of thing. I just think it's, that's just a whole lot clearer, right? And then you can, if you want to, you can just delete those rests. And then this is just, absolutely, you can copy paste that for eternity. I just kind of prefer that. All right. So, yeah, so I'm a little, the only thing I worry about here is rolling on a D when the harmony should be on a D sharp, right? Right? If this is written A sharp, it's sounding D sharp and so on, right? That's the note of the beginning. All right, so it's a very low melody, and it's an enclosure of the of the bassoons doubling the cellos here, and the danger is that you are creating a minor chord, right? You're creating a D sharp minor chord by doing the enclosure. When you put the octave melody on top and you have the F sharp thirds below, you are creating an F sharp 6 chord, right? So it's like F sharp and A sharp are the bottom two notes the F sharp and the A sharp are the bottom two notes of an F sharp major chord. And instead of having a C sharp on top, it has a D sharp on top, which turns it into a 6th chord, right? But like when you put the D sharp on the bottom, you turn it into D sharp minor, right? So that's the problem in here. But like since you have given us this grounding low F sharp, and you have brought out these just really nicely have very audible F sharps in here, then you can kind of get away with it. Now, like having said that, like here you're saying piano with your celesta. This should be mezzo piano here, mezzo piano there, and you should, if there's any way to bulk this up with, like say maybe flute instruments playing alongside and so on at piano, just to really firm up the sound of the cascade here, then I think that this all works fine, right? Okay, and then continuing on here, you finally bring in piccolo at the top, and that works great. So like here, where in the piano score it drops the octaves down, and in most scoring, I'm not seeing balanced dropped octaves with the middle voices. You're choosing to add yet another pitch on top. Well, I think that you also, well, here you're saying forte and fortissimo. Yeah, I mean, the harp can play like really intense plucking here, but the celesta is never going to really get above mezzo forte. I mean, you could go ahead and mark it forte or even fortissimo, but like really it's kind of a thunk. Kind of like, have you ever like hit a broken key on a keyboard and you sort of hear this thunk? And that's kind of what it's like to like really hit some celesta. As like it doesn't matter how hard you hit it or how fast you hit it, that little celesta hammer is not going to hit a whole lot harder, right? So yeah, so I mean, I guess forte and fortissimo, that's fine, but like yeah, the answer here is not to mark this up as much as it is to add more voices bulking this up, right? So you're perfectly within your right. Like you have a flute that's not doing anything. Oboes, clarinets, they could all be helping out right in here and gradually start to take over from the harp and the celesta. Like I would say, like, just gradually insinuate into the picture as you bring in your brass hotter and hotter, which just will blast these instruments out of the water. Right, but this is really cool. Like having adding another octave here with your violins, right? And I think this might be a little much here. Doubling up your horns. I'm not sure what that does for the continuity here. But like here you're adding, like when you add this octave, you add more harmony. So it wouldn't be bad for this to be like in like considering just how much weight you're putting on the melody here. It wouldn't hurt for you to double up your violins here. Like you'd have both groups of violins playing the melody here, plus maybe like two oboes or clarinets or something. Just something to match the force that you're eventually going to get in here. All right. So, all right, now we got into here, and I think that like if you are listening back to the mock-up and just kind of kicking yourself a little bit and saying, "Oh boy, those chords are totally wrong. I don't know how I did that." Yeah, so like some pitches here line up with the chord, right, and then I think others might be like possibly inadvertently added from the bass clef part or something. So. Yeah, so here we got the E thirds, right? And then, but the pitch above it shouldn't be a C, it should be a B, right? So a B there. And then these are B flat clarinets, right? So, yeah, so you are intending to play like an E fifth here. So that's, that's all cool. And here you got like G and C sharp. So like the voicing here is kind of strange, right? And you would be better off with like E and B or E and C sharp. And then here like this written F sharp is the low E. So like I think that like you should have put in a B here or something, or actually probably would be better for there to be an E6th here in the bassoons, and then this added as a B in the middle, right? But it's like it's so stretched out. Like there is a bunch of harmony in the middle that isn't getting played, right, by any instrument, and then that just sort of compounds the error. You don't quite catch up to voicings that are reflected in the piano part till later, and they're still a little strange, right? Yeah. So you just need to rework the harmony here. I'm not going to go over every possible error, but for all I know, like this is the quandary for me. Maybe you were reworking the harmony. You wanted it to say something different there. So I kind of don't know, right? But what I do know here is that the melody is at the top of the chord voicing. It's not in the middle. So like here you have E's, right? And then you jump down to A. So it's like it's not E A. It is B A, right? Is the actual melody. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, so it's not all that high. So it's just a bit of a minefield in there. It needs to be fixed. This is all fine in here. Kind of fun. Yeah. And it's something where like if you just had a few more voices here, but I mean like if you had a spare bass clarinet, or you know if there was some way of like maybe adding a little bit of horns or some other kind of thing to kind of fill in some of this and free up some of your bass instruments, this probably would be a little bit more cohesive. One thing is for sure is that like you kind of go from this push here in the brass, and then you go immediately to winds and strings, so that like the consistency of the texture is a little like it just really shifts to a different kind of strength right as you're building. So it's holding back a little bit. Maybe when it could be a little bit more colorful and bright and punchy. It's just a thought. Okay. Now, da 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 bum bum ba dum da da. It's a very cool part right in here. Yeah, and look, and you have to tell us like if you throw in an extra pitch, who is that? Is this both horns, and then suddenly you're dropping to an interval, or what is it? And like in a place like this, you have a kind of a crossing of the different. Like you've got, it looks like you have like the first horn part on a lower line, and the second horn part possibly on a upper line, and it just the yeah. Here's the thing: is that like you might think, well, why not give like the lower horns or like the lower group of horns a chance to play higher and so on. The thing is, it's just the way everybody listens to each other in the horn section, is that the second and fourth are really listening to the first and the third for like guidance as how to work their intonation. And then of course you can give them parts where they're playing more of the top part or whatever. But it's just like, especially in a situation like this where the pitches are just really tricky. There's a lot of double sharps and craziness and complex harmony happening around them. I would give the responsibility for the highest voice to the most senior player, right? All right, and this is all cool in here. Bop, 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 bop. So non-legato. Any chance of just giving us some articulation here to guide us? Maybe staccato marks. So like right in here, there's no need for you to put in a gap just because there is a gap in the piano part. The gap is in the piano part to help accentuate the octave melody. But since you already have other instruments that can do that, like can bring out the octave melody beautifully, you don't need to hold back here, or you don't even need to hold back here. You have these, you could have like an arc that goes this way, then an arc that goes that way, that starts in the middle. Just sort of how you have things continuing on, right? And then continuing on here and there and there and there. So why not fill in the rests here? Yeah, and so we really need to know how many trumpets this is. I'm going to assume that this is one trumpet and this is two trumpets. Right? This is intended to be a duet. And just a little reference again. Yeah, two flutes. Oops. Sorry. So yeah, so let's assume that this is that. I don't know. This could be one flute here, but let's assume that this is two flutes here. So you've got two flutes doubled by violins. You've got two trumpets doubled by second violins, and then yet an octave lower you have your violas. Why not take everything up an octave? Why just have your violas sitting where your seconds are, your seconds where your firsts are, and your firsts an octave higher than that? And then you can boost some of these parts too. Like you could have an octave played here by the flutes could be playing in octaves here, and then the top flute could be doubled by piccolo, right? And you could do the same thing with the trumpets. You could throw in a trumpet. The trumpets could be playing octaves as well here, right? And just really get a huge, massive sound. Along with non-legato, marcato, right? Marcato, just like everybody hammering away at this. Yeah, and maybe also marcato accents here. So like it would be martellato, which means hammering, right? Just bam, 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 bam. Just really just much more severe, right? Because I'm seeing fortissimo markings here, but I'm not seeing fortissimo character of articulation. And same thing here, boom. Wouldn't it be great to mark some accents on this? Bam, or even maybe accented tenuto. Here you're giving, you're not writing dotted whole notes, and you could because the players can sneak breaths. It's really, really easy in this kind of scoring. But if you really just want it to be boop, rest, then that's fine. But I would say make it tenuto, so you just really get that long, direct sound. On and off. That's what tenuto is. It's on and off, right? So which is why people are using it's kind of a delicate, in places where there should be really delicate espressivo articulation. I'm seeing the tenuto marks of the piano score imported into a place where things could be really delicate, and it's just dun, 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 it's almost like pressing a button. Right, when the difference between that and a nicely shaped articulation. Right. So anyways, it's just the melody could just be much bigger here, much more towering. Right. And then now here you finally throw in the piccolo, and I can see you're kind of holding back. You don't want to give away too much at once, but the fact of the matter is that the way that you have your triple octave positioned here. These repeated, these arching horns and these repeated notes here are going to sort of smother the lowest pitches here, and you don't have anybody doubling them anyway. So the violas are gone. Right? So, but just boost everybody up, provide some good, strong doubling melodic instruments, and then things are much more possible. Now, I'm just going to make one more suggestion, and that is. Bruno, you've got some gifts and some imagination, and you're developing towards professional chops in your orchestration. So there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't have varied the approach of this rather than kind of figuring out what works. Okay, this all works, so I'll just leave it going. I'll leave the pot cooking at the same temperature and with the same ingredients all the way through the preparation of the meal, all right? To use cooking analogies. But you could just as easily have shifted around different places. So just the color changes and evolves, and it could instead of this being the peak right here, you could have gotten ever more intense and more screaming until just finally you could have had octave ripping horns here, and and just and this could have just been pushing up to triple forte and incredibly loud here, and then you put the diminuendo here for everybody, right? And leave one instrument tying. So, I mean, I see so much imagination in you, so much potential, so, such great instincts in a lot of places. I wonder that that you might approach a big tutti passage like this, and instead of just, setting all of the functions and letting them ride, letting them develop into something bigger and greater. It's interesting. Like you look at a page of Mahler and you would think, oh wow, big splashy orchestration and so on and so forth. But like if you really look at what he's doing, there's a lot of variation from bar to bar. Like he doesn't just set it and forget it, right? So really try to see if you can bring out more in your orchestration. In just develop and progress the texture, right? Okay, but it's just like every time you get better, you get more competent. There's always another mountain to climb. So the next mountain for you, Bruno, is to look at a passage like this and just really get even more and more and more out of it. All right, but otherwise, great work. I really think that I'm going to make it to the end of this lecture and to the end of my workday. This is great. I was half planning to not record any lectures today, but I have like no time to take a day off this week. If I had taken the day off, I would have had to do extra every day for the next 5 days, and I kind of don't want to do that. Busy enough already. So yeah. So hey, you guys, this is just really great hanging out with you and lecturing about all this stuff and having fun and commenting on things. So we're going to check out A through C now in Bruno's score. And if you're interested in those, and in that writing that I did this morning, and some of the other tips I've been writing over the past week in my spare time, they will be. That right now they're on Patreon. So if you're a Patreon supporter, just go there and check out the feed. But they will be released publicly on Christmas Eve day. Okay, so so watch for those. Like there will be three, I think, orchestration questions. I'm focusing on orchestration questions people have asked in the group and in other groups. There've been actually a couple of really good questions asked in music engraving tips. Oftentimes people will like get the answer in orchestration online, or they'll read in our group. But over in music engraving tips, sometimes the people have no experience whatsoever with orchestration or the orchestration group, or reading our old posts or conversations and stuff. So they'll ask a question in a really basic way, which sort of spurs me to further explanations. Okay, but just stay posted for that. And now let's get back to Bruno's evaluation here. So here, Bruno, you start off with like a due, a two wins here, and you don't need to do that. Maybe you're thinking, well, I want to balance with my horns, but that doesn't balance. Even if these were a due, I would still want this to be pianissimo, right? So, and also you don't need to mention 1 and 2, 3 and 4 here. We know that the customary strategy here is for 1 and 2 to be on top and to be 3 and 4 on the bottom. So if that is the standard here, and we only have one instrument, or excuse me, 2 instruments, and there are 2 instruments scored, you don't need to explain who they are. However, you do need to explain who this is, right? Because you only have a single voice now, right? Probably intended to be a first horn, but then you set up this sort of voice crossing here. I would leave these parts to the first and second and have this to be, like you're saying, oh, I'm being nice to my third and fourth player. Look, they don't need you to be nice. They need you to be an absolutely competent orchestrator, right? So just ooze competence. Make the right decision, the safe decision every time, because you don't know who's going to play this. It could be an orchestra where everybody is the student of the first horn player, right? And then the third gets sick, and then somebody has to fill in, and they're not as good, right? And suddenly, so you have the third playing this, and they crack a note or something like that, and everything starts to fall apart right in here in the horns. So if you just kind of leave things the way that they sort of should be in terms of pitch order, You always get the most reliable result. Okay, I'm not saying that you should always assume the third and fourth are not going to be as good players. That's not it at all. Okay, and there are ways of celebrating their abilities and their parts and everything else. But I would say just like this kind of thing where you like normally it would just be one and two, just leave it that way. Okay, you're all right. Now, one thing you really should do, Bruno, since like your ear is betraying you, like in those the harmonies that we talked about, where you got the wrong chord spelled and so on. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Bruno, will check my each will check each passage's pitches in the mock-up against the original piano score, as played by the pianist that I select, right? That Thomas will select. All right, so just really do that because you have a few careless mistakes like C natural, right? Isn't it supposed to be C sharp? So yeah, so I mean that was the problem with the harmony right in here. Why it sounded so weird. Now here you rearrange the functions of things and it ends up sounding positively medieval, but I really like it. It's like I think that actually sounds really cool the way that you ended up scoring this. So I mean, it's probably not intentional. Now here, this should just be a dotted whole note, shouldn't it? The reason why there were two tied dotted half notes was because Barvinsky wanted to reference where you were in the middle of the bar according to the value of the melody note up here. Okay, but you don't need to do that because this is not a piano. This is not a pianist. This is a flute player, right? So just have a tied whole note. All right. So now let's take apart the scoring here. Oh yeah. One more thing. Okay, before I forget. Okay, so this is quarter note equals 88, right? What is this a tempo in 12/8? Well, here we're talking about the beat, right? So beating in 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because the it's so slow, you're not going to beat the strong beats in the middle of each bar. Each note gets one beat. Now here Barvinsky is saying, okay, well, if each note gets one beat of the baton by the metronome or the conductor or whoever, we're going to take that same pulse of 88 and we're going to put it here. But since this is 12/8, see, he thinks that it goes without saying that this should be a dotted quarter note equals 88. And that's why everything sounds so slow, right? And there's so many great effects. And then, like, if you looked at my template, and you would have seen that I followed more or less the tempo that was laid down by Violina Petrochenko. This is another reason, like part of this challenge is for my participants to really listen to the pianist I select, listen to their phrasing, listen to their inflections, listen to their dynamics, and listen to their tempos, right? And that will make your mock-up and your perception and your scoring and everything else much, much more exciting, okay? So, like, you can just tell right here, just everything feels too slow, and that's because you didn't update the tempo. So a tempo, but a tempo dotted quarter note equals 88. And then further on, like as these parts start to unfold, this could be like even, a little bit more and a little bit more and even more. And by the time here, you notice that in my template, I marked precipitoso, right? So precipitously. So, just really, just like head over heels, right? So, yeah. So just watch those things. All right. So now let's check out the scoring. I don't want to run out of time. Okay. So back to this. So just a single, you have a clarinet on top. You're playing octaves here. So a single player on each one and your horns pianissimo. And then you have a beautiful balance. And then here you want the flutes to phase in. So what you need to do there is have a diminuendo at the end, right? And then you get a beautiful sound. So just like pull out here. And then the flutes play and then come back in at piano, right? And they do this thing. And then once again fade out, right? And then the flutes come back in again. And then piano again. Keep your horns pianissimo. Okay, and then like this will all work beautifully together. Just throw in C sharp, right? Ya da 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 dum ba dum bum, and this really needs to fade out, right? Because you don't want you don't want your horns interfering with your flutes. Yeah, and and then fade in, I would say. So pianissimo, fade out, and then fade in back to pianissimo here. Da 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 da. And here you could nuance these. Da 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 da, and then da 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 da. Right, so like they both could have opposing fluctuations of dynamics, right? But a beautiful idea, the way things are set up in here. Okay, and I really love this little, doubling just for a second the clarinets. That's really a lovely idea. Da 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 da. So let's talk a little bit about phrasing. Do you really want da da ta? Right? That just seems a little weird. Couldn't it be like instead of slurring forward all the time and slurring across, like like when you do this kind of thing, you take away the emphasis of the tonguing on the downbeat. So it's like ta. What if it were ta 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 ta. You know what I mean? Like, what if you like just rearrange the things so that you've got more pulse on the downbeat, right? And like like for instance, like you can slur yourself into a place where nothing really says what it's supposed to. Like here, you're going, da da da, but here you're going da da. These aren't two separate pitches. This is the enharmonic equivalent of this, so you are slurring across the same pitch, right? And here, ta. What's going on here? Get rid of the slur entirely. Ta 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 ta. Just make these all accents, right? Or you could go like, accent, accent, staccato, accent, right? Ta 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 ta. Or you could go accent, accent, staccato, marcato, right? But yeah, just don't slur so much, right? You don't need it. I mean, that's not in the piano part, right? It's that's not what's going on, right? So don't you do it either, right? You're lessening the impact of your playing. All right. Well, I just wanted to throw that in there, but okay, but aside from those caveats, I think it's kind of cool the way the strings come in here and so on. All right, and that okay. So now we've got this lovely idea in here with cellos and first horn playing together. Couldn't we just finish the slur here? Couldn't we have these bowed a little bit more sensibly? Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, as opposed to down. It's like all one bow. Up. It's just and look at these poor violas who have to just like hold this for almost 2 whole bars at a very slow speed that you didn't correct, right? So make this. I mean, the horn could just be like all the way to there. That's fine. But I think that just you need more sensible slurs. And I would make this a separately articulated note. Ta 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 ta. I'm actually singing this in 6/8. Apologies. Been a long day. Yeah. So aside from those objections, it's actually kind of cool. Now, and this is also kind of amazing, like the way that this flows upwards. I mean, it's a great way of interpreting the left hand figuration. The thing that I would worry about is that we kind of lose, like even with this, like the double basses are basically, you're doubling this pitch. You kind of don't even need to, right? You could just have your cellos, like if you just redo the bowing, the cellos can easily play this, and you don't need the variation of timbre all that much, because it doesn't make that much of a difference because of the way that the winds are positioned, right? They sort of blot out your perception of how different these two string groups could be. Okay, well, that's not the problem, though. The problem is that, like, by really boosting the flow of this upwards, we're losing the sense of pulse from below, right? So I think you would have to add something to just like keep something pumping from the bottom. Even if it's like just a little pizzicato touch, pluck, 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 right? Or pluck, pluck. Just something to kind of just give us a little bit of rhythmic context. All right, and and once again, like here you're going from, I don't know, is this A2? Like here you say A2. We know, right? There are two voices here. You only need to say A2 or A2 when there is a single line. It's saying, hey, this single line is played by two people. But you don't need to say, hey, look, these two notes are played by two people, right? Exactly, right? Because it's obvious, right? So you don't need to say this. All right, so, but like, who's playing what when? Is this, are these two clarinets playing this and then one on each pitch? Or is this first clarinet and then you're adding the second clarinet on these two pitches? You need to work that out because the way that it's scored is really not clear. All right. Okay, so kind of the same approach. Now you're starting, starting to add more voices. Da 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 da. Yeah, kind of nice. I feel that there could be a little bit more support of the middle voice, right? Because you just have all of this this stuff fluttering around. I'm wondering if you could have instead of sort of setting it and forgetting it, like if you could have reinterpreted this. Like once we start getting into this area here, what if like the pitches could have, instead of like all climbing from the bottom to the top, what if they could have started to alternate back and forth a little, right? Just finding new ways of interpreting this rather than kind of leaving everybody in the same function all the time. Da 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 da, bum 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 bum. Yeah, just So like the sort of the function of the middle voice and everything, it just needs to be a little stronger in here, I think. Dun, dun. See, there's like no, as we go up to this beautiful, precious moment in here, there's no lessening of the dynamic, right? It's like the focus should be hushed because this is playing. Oh my goodness, everything is going up here. What's going on, right? Which happens in the piano part. If you look at the piano part, Barvinsky takes things down. He has a diminuendo set up from back here, and then things get really soft, obviously. And then, and he's got a crescendo built into it, right? So this builds and spills over, right? And then here, you should come back even softer, pianissimo, right? Like he's got it scored. And I wouldn't score things too low in the harmony. Keep everything high. Don't throw in low notes because this is going to ripple over, right? And just spill over and inhabit this. And the harp would need to be louder. All right, and then boo doo 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 doo. All right, so once again, like I kind of have a problem with jumping up, right? Like if you have a line that's intended to go da 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 da, I think that the integrity of the line is really important with Barvinsky. Okay, just like his wandering lines, I think they just need to be kept in order of pitch. And I think that like jumping up a sixth, do you know what I mean? I think that interrupts the flow. I think the flow is really like if it's supposed to start high and go downhill. I think that that's what he wants. I think he would wince a little bit at this, right? And I really respect though that you made that choice, but I'm feeling that it it might not be true to the spirit of the music if you were trying to go in that direction, and especially like jumping up this really high piccolo right in here. So it really feels like we've leapt upwards. Not to say that the scoring doesn't work, though. It's really cool to have bassoon and trumpet in octaves and piccolo above and so on. It's a cool idea. All right, and then we get into this part right in here, and I think that this all works pretty well. And then like here you jump up an additional octave when you add some of this in here, and this is all fine with me. Yeah, and there's little okay. However, no way the celesta, like with this kind of brightness and this kind of power from your brass and so on, and the and from your flutes and so on, it's just going to eat up the celesta. Right? The celesta is just not going to come, and you can hear it in the mock-up, right? Yeah, not that I'm using that as a guide, but it's right. So, you might want to add maybe a big rolled harpsichord up there rather than the celesta. That'll come through better. Anyway, look, obviously you did something really cool here, Bruno, and I'm just picking it apart right and left and saying, oh, have you thought of this? And oh, have you tried that? Or this won't work, or, this is going to blot out that, and so on and so forth. And I don't want you to come away with this thinking that you were disrespected or criticized too much, or that I think anything less of you than of a brilliant developing orchestrator who is building on their skills, with one piece after another. Like to an extent, like the fact that you are making some scoring difficulties for yourself in here is a good thing, right? Because like if everything that you scored was safe, you wouldn't learn anything going forward, right? It's actually good that you have a challenge that is kind of this sprawling, with just a huge, crashing tutti in the middle, and then the very sensitive epilogue and prologue, and the way that everything builds up, and all of the different orchestration problems. So so you can see orchestration as a series of decisions, right? And they can be completely different for each person. So I think like in addition to all of this feedback you're getting from me, go check out some of the other entries, and I think you'll see that like even with really accomplished orchestrators, I had a lot of suggestions and a lot of caveats and a lot of places where I just said like watch out for this, you're in danger of doing that, right? So it's the kind of thing where people pointed out stuff in my scores that I might have where there might be an issue, and fair enough, right? Because I don't really have a proofreader, and I stupidly used the old version of my orchestration before I had corrected a bunch of things like tenor clef in the wrong place and things like that, which immediately got pounced on by a friend of mine. It was fair enough, a good, like, I'll just, people who do that, they earn the award of proofreading my score next year. So, with my appreciation. But anyway, all that aside, I really was very, very happy with your entry this year. And, for me disagreeing with certain things and so on, it's all fine because like you got to experiment with that tone color, right? So it's all good, and I just was so interested to hear like your different ideas and your way of solving certain problems and your outlook and your approaches. And so my final assessment is that like there is nothing that I have objected to or nitpicked that isn't fixable, right? And some of it is just like how do you conceive slurs. Do you really want to slur across a note that should have emphasis? Things like that. So those are just instincts that you eventually learn and pick up and so on. And it's like right now you're focusing a lot on color and some on balance and also on proportions. And I thought that those were really excellent features of your work. So great job with that, Bruno. Anyway, there's kind of nothing left for me to say except for to thank you so much for being a supporter on Patreon and helping me get through this year. Wow, just kind of looking back and thinking how hard I worked this year and just how everything kind of went the wrong direction I needed it to go. And me doing all of these evaluations here at the end of the year is one of those things, is one of those reasons why that all of the plans that I laid out very carefully had stuff that went wrong with them, and hopefully that wasn't my fault so much, but maybe it was for not foreseeing that there would be an additional problem. So every year round, I learn something new about my own limitations and about the limitations of like working in on various projects in certain ways, and just trying to get better and smarter, and that the more that I can do that, the more time I have to spend with you guys. So thank you for making it all possible and for helping me help our friends in Ukraine. That's hugely appreciated. And thanks to all my website subscribers and my regular viewers. You guys are making it all work. So look, comments, thoughts, feedback, added below, right? That's how we all help each other. And that would just really make me happy to see more and more comments and support and help for each other. And Bruno, people are going to comment on your score and they're going to give you positive feedback. And, find out who said it. Go check out their evaluation. Check them out. Give them some positive feedback too, all right? Okay, well, I am well and truly finished for the day, and I want to thank everybody out there for being so awesome. And I will have more cool videos for you tomorrow and just continuing on until Christmas, all right? Hang in there, everybody, and I'll try to as well.